Hello everyone, and welcome to Module 4, Validations. Validations are essentially the rules which we're going to apply to our questionnaire to make sure that the interviewers don't enter any values which are impossible or irrational. The good thing about this module is that we're going to be using the same syntax and operators that we used last module in enabling conditions to set up the validations, so there's not too much new to learn. Validations can be applied upon the question itself. So for example, if we have a question about how old the respondent is, we're not going to allow the interviewer to enter that the respondent is 200 years of age. This is simply impossible. Or validations can be applied in relation to previous questions in the survey. So if earlier on in the survey, the respondent indicated they were married, and then later on in the survey, they indicated they were not married, this could be a validation flagged for consistency. Next, a short word about how validations are handled in survey solutions. Whenever there is a value entered which offends one of our validation conditions, we will display a warning message to the interviewer telling him that this answer is not what we expect it to be and ask him to correct. However, the interviewer can leave this validation in place and the offending value in place and still continue on throughout the questionnaire. Likewise, the interviewer can leave a question completely blank if the respondent does not know the answer or it can't be given, and he can still continue through the questionnaire. The reason that the survey solutions is set up like this is because the designers of the system tried to make the flow of survey solutions mimic as close as possible paper-based surveys. So when you're working on a paper-based survey in the field, your interviewer can write down any value he wants, and he can also scribble a small note next to it. Likewise, if he doesn't know the answer to a question, he can move forward through the paper without having to stop. So first of all today, let's take a look at the difference between error messages and warning messages. First of all, we have warning messages. They display like this with an orange message for the interviewers. These should be used when the value is unexpected, but not completely impossible. It flags the value to the enumerator and tells them to check the answer over. On the other hand, error messages display in a red font. You should use error messages when the value entered is completely impossible. For example, the 13th month of the year. So to understand the difference between error messages and warning messages, let's consider the simple example of age. So it is possible that we can come across a respondent who is more than 100 years old. However, it's pretty uncommon. Often this might be an entry error. Take for example, if your interviewer is trying to enter 11 and he presses an extra 1, we'll be left with the number 111. So it could be an entry error, or it could be that in fact that the respondent is 111 years old. For this, we should display a warning message asking the interviewer to check what he's entered and to confirm it is correct. On the other hand, with age, we can also reach a point where it's truly impossible. So, say perhaps around 120 years old, it's not possible that a person can be this old. So if a value over 120 years is entered, let's consider this impossible. Here we're going to use an error message telling the interviewer that this cannot be done. Let's have a look how we set these up in the designer. So let's set up our first validation in Module B of the example questionnaire at question B6 for age. To set up a validation, you can scroll down and press this button here, Add New Validation. Then, just like the enabling condition, we have a box to enter our syntax in. You can toggle between red error message and orange warning message by ticking this button here. And then in this box, you can write in the error you'd like to display on the screen. So first of all, I'm going to create my warning message. So I want the warning message to display only if the respondent is between 100 and 120 years of age. When we write a validation, we need to sort of write it the other way around. I need to write in the code here when I don't want this message to display or when the answer is valid. So in this case, I'm going to not display the orange message when our value is less than 100 or greater than 120. Another thing to note when using your validations is to always use the command self rather than writing B6. This is because if you happen to change your variable name for some reason, your validation will not follow if you use the variable name, but self will always reference itself. So let's write our validation. Self is less than 100 or self is greater than 120. And for my message, I'm going to write, please check respondent's age and save. But I want to also make a second validation on this question. So you can see here we can add another validation. You can have many, many validations on the same question, but make sure that they don't conflict with one another. So for my error validation, it's going to be self is less than 120. And my error message there is going to be simply respondent is too old. Please enter correct age. Let's see how this works in the test. So we can see now for my age, if I'm less than 100, I should receive no warnings. Great. Now, if I'm 105, we'll receive our warning message only. But if I enter 130, I'll receive the red error. That's all for this lesson on an introduction to validations. Join me next time and we're going to be learning how to make validations on previous questions in the questionnaire.